Okay, so these are the hands here, and as you can see, the lifeline has got a really large gap at the bottom of it, making it quite a short lifeline. We're going to explore this lifeline and how it's affecting this person very shortly, but first I just want to run through a couple of shapes and markings with this hand so we've got a bit of an overview. It's quite an earthy type hand. There's a physicality to the palm, it's quite broad and the fingers are quite short, showing that this person's got some good supportive qualities, they're quite enduring, and ideally they would like some stability and routine within their life because of this earth quality. His skin is actually quite sensitive. If you look at the fine lines and markings he's got on his hand, this is somebody who's a little bit more sensitive than a typical earthy hand. So this isn't going to be somebody who's going to be 100% comfortable being a manual worker in some kind. This is somebody that's got more emotional resonance and more refinement and perhaps a more academic side. Now, if you look at his headline, it's quite dipping. So this shows somebody who's quite a subjective thinker. Their mind is dipping into their subconscious part of their hand. If you combine this dipping headline with the larger little finger which he has got, which adds insight, perception to the person, this is definitely somebody that's going to be interested in their own psychology, their own nature. They're going to be delving quite deeply into themselves. And from my perspective, having an artistic or creative outlet becomes very important with this combination, because otherwise somebody can become very self-centered and stuck in their own world, which can sometimes be quite murky when we're dealing with things to do with the subconscious. If we look at the emotion line, it's quite scratchy. So this shows somebody who's had quite an emotional roller coaster of things, and how that's affecting him currently is it's going to be quite difficult to get very close to this person. There's a layer of protection around the emotion, the heart line, showing that it's going to take you much longer to get really close to him because he's not going to want to open up quite so quickly. So you see the emotion line combined with this dipping headline is definitely somebody that's going to be quite emotionally dominant, but could get stuck in their own subconscious, their own sort of murky, introverted world sometimes. So if we start to look at the fate line, which is the line that's running up the center of the palm, the way that I would interpret this is that the fate line here is supporting the lack of lifeline. So the lifeline stops, there's a big gap, and what's happening for me is that the fate line becomes the new lifeline to some degree. What I would expect to see when this is the case is that somebody doesn't have their true sense of root, they don't feel as grounded as what they could do, and then from an external source they seek this sense of grounding, they seek this sense of feeling connected and strong and stable. And very often this is with a job, and when I was speaking to this person about it, he totally recognized this and said that his career when he was a social worker totally became his routine. It was everything that gave him his sense of structure and made him feel grounded and gave him his rhythm. So we can see that that's happening there with the fate line, but let's start to look at the short lifeline and how it affects the person, because what it does is it really ticks sort of every box that what could happen when the lifeline is short. So first of all, how a short lifeline affects somebody mentally. This person suffers from anxiety. They can be very nervous and quite timid and shy and things, but particularly anxiety is the key word. When somebody's got a short lifeline, they don't feel that strong and stable because they haven't got their root connecting them to the ground. So therefore, of course, mentally, they are going to feel more anxious. They're not going to be able to cope with stressful circumstances, or if the outer world suddenly becomes a bit scary, or there's too much going on, or they're in a crazy busy country and it's very loud and stressful, somebody with a shorter lifeline is going to have that affect them much more than somebody who's got a very long, strong one. Physically, a short lifeline can affect somebody too. And this person has a lot of digestive issues. He takes an awful lot of digestive enzymes and he basically struggles in this area quite a lot. This is very common because when the short lifeline shows like this, it means that the body hasn't got its rhythm, it hasn't got its stability, and it hasn't got its anchor connecting it. And when it hasn't got these things, the first thing physically that starts to be affected is digestion, because there's no rhythm to the body, so it's not digesting things properly. The stomach really gets affected. The second thing that I normally see that gets affected is someone's sleep patterns. And I asked him about this and he said that he's an insomniac and he really does struggle with sleep as well. This is really common because, of course, if the body hasn't got this rhythm, if it's not connected to the earth, it hasn't got these natural cycles. So, of course, physically, digestion and sleep are going to be affected. On another level, the short lifeline really relates to someone's physical base and their home. And he does an awful lot of traveling. He finds it very hard to stay put. And he says that he's never really found his true home. He doesn't really know where the best place for him is. And of course, when somebody has got a very short lifeline, they find it incredibly hard to find somewhere where they feel comfortable, because wherever they go, they're going to feel a little bit wobbly. So it doesn't really matter where they are, they're always going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and that they could be somewhere else that makes them feel more grounded. If we look at his hand in general, the lines, we can see that the lifeline is definitely the weakest and shortest of them all. So therefore, this is really the area in which he has to work on, in which he has to give precedent to. He doesn't work doing his social work anymore. And when I discussed the relationship between the external support and his lifeline, he explained to me about this Buddhist group that he's part of, and he goes all around the world having these lectures and taking courses and doing these meditations with this sect of Buddhism. And he says that he doesn't really particularly like it, but he acknowledges that it makes him feel incredibly grounded. And he says that support network of people make him feel very strong. And of course, this is very typical. When somebody has got the missing bottom to the lifeline, but they've got this strong fate line coming up supporting it, you would definitely expect to see something external that's replacing the internal lifeline that's missing. So it's really a very good example of how a short lifeline can affect somebody in very clear, strong ways. It's affecting somebody mentally in terms of the anxiety that they can have, physically in terms of their digestion, their sleep patterns and their body and energy levels, and physically and mentally in terms of their home, their connection to where they want to live and their base. For this person here, it's really important that they start putting some of their mental energy that they've got a lot of and some of their emotional energy back into their root, working on making themselves feel strong and grounded and working on their body physically in order to make them feel overall much, much better. The answer for this person is to work on their lifeline, and that's really what I discussed in his reading and how he can move forward productively and happily. Okay, everybody, I hope that makes sense. As always, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments box and I'll see you next time.